and welcome to the Good Health Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Good, a registered nutritional therapy practitioner and functional medicine practitioner. Join me as we explore thyroid, brain, and fatigue conditions with positivity. From Hashimoto's to multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue to adrenal dysfunction, I've got you covered. With expert advice and tips to help you take action now and inspiring real patient stories from successful individuals who refuse to let their health hold them back. Start your journey to good health today. And don't forget to come and join the conversation on Instagram at good_health. That's GOODE. Or visit my website at nicolegoodhealth.com to find out more. Today, I'm talking to fellow practitioner Farzanah Nasser. She's a nutritional therapist and a certified functional medicine practitioner. She specializes in autoimmunity with a special interest in Hashimoto's disease and the gut microbiome. Today, we dig into our own personal health journeys and underlying root causes. We talk about the link between stress and the gut and stress as a trigger for autoimmunity. We also dive into gut health and the microbiome with some amazing tips from Farzanah on that you can implement into your day-to-day life. I'm thrilled to have Farzanah on the podcast and have this opportunity to share her wisdom with you all. Let's jump into the conversation. Farzanah, welcome to the Good Health Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, so today kind of wanted to jump into, I've asked people sort of emailed my list and asked on Instagram what people wanted to talk about. And overwhelmingly, the questions that came back for you were obviously around autoimmunity, which I know we both work in, but specifically around kind of gut health and stress. These were the things that kind of all the questions were around. So that's where we're going to kind of dig in today. But before we get into those sorts of things, what I'd love to do is start with your journey into nutrition and functional medicine, because I know that we've usually all got some kind of a story around how we got into doing this work. And it's usually more of a passion, or there's a personal story there. So I'd love to just sort of chat about that a bit first and hear your story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was very much a personal story that brought me into nutrition and functional medicine. I actually graduated from doing finance and worked in investment banking until I was about 28 years old. And I had hormone issues, gut issues. I had it all going on. So I had PCOS, I had psoriasis, I had an ulcer. I felt like I was just burnt out. I was given like different medications to take, like creams for the psoriasis, offered the pill. But I wanted to understand what was going on. So I've been brought up in quite a natural background. When I was sick, my mum would take me to the homeopath. I mean, my dad was drinking kombucha like 30 years ago when we all thought it was still a little bit weird.
Before it was trendy.
Yeah. But so I guess I wanted to understand what was going on. Like, it didn't make sense to me to like be taking the medications. And then if you look at the side effects, there's always like, it could be camouflaging this or this. And then that got me a little bit concerned. So I guess it was my own desire to understand what's going on, why is it going on, and how can I actually do something about it? Because there was a time that this wasn't there and I was okay. So how do I get back to that? So that led me down the road of going back to school, retraining in nutrition, and then, doing my functional medicine certification as well.
And looking back on that sort of journey now, can you kind of trace it back? Because this is something that obviously we do in functional medicine. When we've got somebody that comes to us, we're all about sort of tracing back to those root causes and figuring out, including taking their kind of their health history, but also their kind of life history of what was going on in their life at that time, and and things like that. So thinking back now with your own story, your own health, can you trace back now to those root causes? What were the triggers for you? What was going on at that time that you feel was sort of what started all of this? Because like you said, there was a time before this where you were well.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because we know stress is a huge driver. And I feel like I had so many different stressful events that were happening. My parents live abroad. They're in the States. I'd moved to the UK. I'd got married. I started a new job. I was in investment banking. It was really stressful. I had long days. And so I think it's a mix of like all these things were stressful, right? They're all change. They're all putting stress on the system, and then being quite stressed out for different reasons, then it affects the way you eat, the food choices that you make. And so I think it was just like, the stress and then the food choices all like foundational to everything else that then started to pop up after that.
Because I think everybody thinks when we work in this industry that we work in, I think people assume that we've always been really healthy eaters. I think they sort of think it's something that we've been perfect maybe with our diet all our life, and it's not always the case. I mean, I know certainly for me, I would never say I was a bad eater. I was brought up in a household where we did a lot of home cooking and and things like that. So a good eater generally, but not as much, because I didn't have the knowledge then, not as much as I am now. I do a lot more now, and even now I'm not perfect. No one is, but it's not necessarily the case that diet has always been really good for us just because we work in the industry.
No, it's such a journey. I mean, when this was all happening, I was having like coffee and a croissant, or I'd be having Weetabix, and I thought I was really healthy. I was quite proud of myself. So I saw a nutritionist as well when this was going on, and and that also guided me to going back to school and studying nutrition. But initially I was just like, but what do you mean? Like, Weetabix is fine. What's wrong with the croissant? It's not, in my head, it's like, it's not Cocoa Pops,
Yeah.
So it was healthy. Or like orange juice, it was healthy. So it's a journey. We all have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And we experiment, we see how things make us feel, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was the triggers when I traced mine back. Well, mine started when I had EBV, so I had Epstein-Barr virus at 17. That was kind of where it all started, I guess. And now we associate that it's very linked to various autoimmune diseases. And I think maybe some people have we've said for a long time these things are linked, but it's actually coming through in the science now that it is. We've got studies now very linked, particularly to MS, which is for me what it triggered. But when I look back on that time, I know you said for you stress, the EBV started at a time where I did have a lot of stress because I was 17. I was at a very academic school. So I was doing all the exams and all of that sort of thing. So I feel like it's not always just one thing. I think, I can sort of look back and say, yeah, okay, Epstein-Barr, that was the start of when things kind of went a bit wrong for me. But there was other things going on as well, because there was stress in my life, and maybe my gut health probably, and it didn't test at that time, but I would imagine probably wasn't at its best. And so there's often a few things as well, I think, when we start looking back at that journey, isn't there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even just like the viral issue, like you say, it's so overlooked. So I've had psoriasis, and I had really high levels of cytomegalovirus. Like, these aren't things that are checked or looked at. And my viral load has been so raised. And it's only when I looked into it, I was, yeah. And just when you see it and then you can work on it, and then you actually, it can be really helpful for sure. So yeah, I think that's a whole area that's just not looked at enough.
Yeah, definitely. And how much do you feel that your personal journey into all of this, into nutrition and functional medicine, how do you feel that impacts your work today? So do you feel like, maybe the way that you understand clients, what they're going through, how hard it is to make changes, how do you feel that sort of personal journey has helped you in terms of helping other people?
No, completely. We understand like how many changes have to take place. We have to understand like the testing part of it. We have to understand that you've got to meet somebody where they're at as well. But we also know that there's so much that can be done for whatever imbalance that you have, autoimmune, hormonal, gut. There's a lot that can be done. I mean, obviously there's research coming out in different areas all the time, but there's so much information that really helps you like pave the way, and to be able to support someone, even a few foundational things can be life-changing, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I always say that with when you start working with somebody, getting the foundations in place is really important. And I think because people come to me, and this is probably the same for you, because they're coming with autoimmunity, which is, I guess people see it as a more serious, they're not just going to a nutritionist to eat well and clean up their diet and that sort of thing. It's because they've got a condition. And I think almost people sort of come to me and sort of think, well, I've kind of got the basics in place. Like, I want to go straight into the autoimmunity and dig into all of that. And of course we need to do that, but we still need to get the foundations in place as well. And like you said, some of those really simple steps can make the world of difference for people, can't they?
Yeah, I mean, it is the foundations, and everything else we do is layering it on top, right? So if you don't have that stuff good, and like, even just looking at basic blood work and correcting imbalances, the way you're eating, how you're eating, just all these things, looking at stress. Like, obviously there's no getting away from stress, we all have stress, but being able to manage it as best as possible, looking at all those things, it's so foundational. It's really hard to layer the work on top, because it's a matter of layering it on top. If you don't have it doesn't work as well if you don't have the foundations.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump back to stress as the root cause that you just mentioned, because it seems obviously that played a part for both of us. And it definitely at least plays a role in that kind of perfect storm that we need for autoimmunity. But stress has such a huge impact on all autoimmune diseases, really, doesn't it? Can you tell us like a little bit about that sort of impact, and why stress is so important, and why we talk about it a lot when we're talking about autoimmunity?
Yeah, no, stress. I mean, unfortunately, there's no getting away from stress, right? We can't get away from stress. We all have different stresses, but it's our perception of the stress as well and that's what we want to work on, is the perception. But as soon as we're stressed out, like immediately it affects our immune health. So affects our gut, it affects our immune health, and then it does have a domino effect on every single system of the body. So when you're stressed out, your body can't differentiate whether you're stressed because you're stuck in traffic, or you're like multitasking, or if you're running away from a tiger. So your body thinks of stress as the survival response, and that you're trying to escape from the tiger. And so what it's doing is all the essential things like digestion shut down, and it's sending blood to your peripheries, your muscles, so that you can run away from that tiger, because that's what it's thinking. So for example, when you're eating your meal and you're stressed out, that could be just getting up, sitting down, just multitasking, trying to do many things at the same time. Your blood is not going to your digestive system, and as soon as when that's happening, you're not producing stomach acid. So stomach acid is our first line of defense, and it's also the beginning of digestion. So stomach acid is there to break down proteins. It triggers digestion. It triggers other enzymes to be released that support digestion as well. It's also going to help prevent like bacteria and stuff from getting into our system. It stops that from happening. So if that's not working, if we're stressed and we're not producing enough stomach acid, that's impairing our first line of defense, but it's also impairing our digestion as well. There was a study that was done, and it had two groups of people, and one group of people, they were shown a video, and it was quite a I don't know, it was like a horror movie, and it showed that instantly we have immune cells in that line are the whole of our GI tract. And the reason our GI tract, which is from our mouth all the way to our anus, is really important is because it's what is exposed to the outside world. And so we have immune cells lining this area. And so one of the immune cells we have is IgA, and it's a secretion by our immune system that protects this lining. And so when they were shown this horror movie, these immune cells dropped considerably in number. So the people watched this horror film, they got really stressed. The first line of defense for their immune system dropped considerably. And the other group of people were shown a really lovely movie, it's very sweet, like caring. And the opposite happened. They had improved secretory IgA. So their first line of defense actually improved, and it was much healthier. So, just in those two examples, it's affecting your first line of defense in two ways: your stomach acid, your secretory IgA, and your defenses go down. It's going to allow problems, to get into the system, and, things like, viruses, bacteria to cause more havoc.
Yeah, I love that. I hate horror movies. So that would definitely, I'm sure they should have put me in that trial, because I'm sure it would have had a really bad impact on me. I can't watch horror. I love films. I can watch like any genre, but I can't watch horror. They just really freak me out. So I would always choose the nice one.
Stress had such an impact. Immediately, these lines of defense went down. Whereas the opposite, calm, happy, improved it.
I remember I went to the kind of going off nutrition a bit, but I went to the cinema once with a group of friends, and we were at the counter to get tickets, and we were making a decision on what film we were going to see, and the overwhelming vote was to go and see Texas Chainsaw Massacre. which I really did not want to go and see. It's just not not my sort of film at all. And we got our tickets, and there was me and one other girl. We were like, even just the stress of thinking about going to see it, we were like right at the back of the group of friends. We were like walking in, we were like, I really don't want to go and see this. We opened the door and we heard like the opening music was already playing. All our friends like walked in, we were at the back. I was like, I just don't think I can do it. I really don't want to go and see this film. My friend was like, no, I don't. So we held back, we disappeared from the group, and we looked at the opposite door, and it was Finding Nemo. So we jumped in this screen opposite.
I love that.
And we went and watched Finding Nemo, and we came out, we finished earlier, and we came out and we were sat in the foyer afterwards, and we were like really happy. We were like really chilled out. We were like having a laugh. You're really, really enjoying ourselves. Our friends came out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and they all looked ill. We were just like, you should have gone and see Finding Nemo. We were fine. It's like, but it's amazing how you could see the difference just from walking out of the two films. It's like,
yeah, no, absolutely, yeah, I would have anxiety from like a movie like that for a week. Like I am in the sense that I will keep thinking about it, and it just makes me feel like a little bit stressed. So yeah, I don't enjoy movies like that. But that's another reason why it's so important, like before we eat our meals, to take a couple of deep breaths, or to, have gratitude and think of something that you're grateful for, because then it helps put you in that calm state, that rest and digest, to help with and
that's why not rushing our meals as well, and sort of that mindful eating and naturally sitting down and giving yourself time to eat your meals, and rather than the kind of on the go sort of eating at our desk and things like that everybody's become a bit too used to. So for stress relief, I guess, because like you said, we can't avoid stress, and I have, when I was going through the sort of the journey of getting diagnosed, I did have doctors who said to me, you need to just avoid stress. And it's like, great, thanks. It's not realistic. You can't, we all know that we need to avoid stress, but it's not something that we can, realistically do. Life has stresses. We can do things to manage it, help us to deal with stress and things like that. So for you personally, what sort of things do you put in place to help yourself to deal with sort of stress, or whether it's daily stresses or to deal with like stress that comes along, a bit more sort of serious stress? What sort of things do you do to help yourself?
Well, I feel like yoga's really helped me. So I consistently do yoga at least a couple of times a week. I feel like I just feel calmer. So that monkey brain, I feel like I have that if I don't do yoga. But yoga is really good at calming your nervous system down, and just doing it a couple of times a week can just help keep you a little bit more settled, help the nervous system, just make you feel a little bit more grounded. And sometimes, like, I will think as well, like, I don't have time, like there's too many things, I don't have time to go for a class. But actually, when you do go for a class, because your nervous system is so much better afterwards, you're so much more efficient in getting things done, right? What would have taken me 5 hours actually just took me 3. So it actually benefited me from going to that class, and that will have, a knock-on effect for the next couple of days. I also really like grounding. So it's so easy and it's free. When I get up in the morning, I'll have my breakfast outside, or I'll just, I'll do maybe just my own yoga sequence in the morning on the ground, on the grass, have my coffee. I mean, it gets harder as the days get colder, but just like 5 minutes, it's calming, it's anti-inflammatory, and it's really, really beneficial. And actually, as the days do get colder, I know the grass gets wet, but actually the wet actually helps with that conductivity, and so that can be even more beneficial. But those are 2 things I'm quite consistent with to help my nervous system. Sleeping,
that's a big one for me.
Just making sure like I'm getting enough sleep, that I'm regular with going to bed on time. That's just so simple, but so huge, because I think, you're so busy working that a lot of people like to stay up later to feel like they've had some time, but then they're playing catch up.
Yeah, I'm a good sleeper and I get my 8 hours, but I'm naturally a person who doesn't get up first thing and work. I can't work first thing in the morning. I need my little bit of time in the morning to sort myself out. And but I can work later. So I'm that typical kind of night owl, I guess, and I function better at night than I do first thing in the morning. But actually, and it's not a good thing. And it's like an ongoing battle for me. I have to kind of fight against it, because my natural instinct is to stay up later and wake up later. but yeah, that's one for me that is one of those habits that is really hard for me personally to break, and I know some people can go to bed sort of really early and are fine with it. I just end up lying there and don't sleep. I struggle with it, but it's, yeah, that for me is something that I find really difficult. I get my 8 hours, so I do well with sleep, but yeah, I struggle with that sort of pre-midnight sleeping. I am getting enough of that in.
That's really interesting, because our genes play an impact. We've got your clock genes, right, that dictate the way we work better as well. But just making sure you're getting your 8 hours.
Yeah, I always do that. That's like my counter to the fact that I am a bit of a night owl, is that I'm not a party animal at all. But I am a night owl. I don't sleep early, but I do always make sure that I get the hours in, and I get good hours that are not, uninterrupted sleep and all of that. But I wish I was more of a go to bed early sort of a person, because it is really beneficial to get that, particularly those hours before midnight, isn't it? It is useful if you can get those in. It's very beneficial.
I'm exhausted by 9:30, 10. So I am in bed at 10. And then my son has basketball practice at 7 a.m. every morning. So I wake up at 6. So it works for me, but I couldn't go to bed later than that because I have to wake up so
that's it. I think if you particularly if there's children around that you need to be up early for and things like that, then you have to kind of counter it, don't you, by going to bed early. When you come to we've talked about that sort of connection between stress and the gut, and we know that they're highly linked. But when you come to do a history with a client, this was a question actually that came in for you. They wanted to know, when you take that history for a client, what the sort of telltale signs that you would be looking for if you're looking for kind of, gut health issues, trying to decide whether it's something to work on, any things that kind of come up instantly that would make you sort of say this person needs to have comprehensive stool tests. I think she was thinking around whether she needed one, and she was wondering what those kind of warning signs are. And it's not always gut related, is it? But it's...
Oh, I always do a stool test. Anything can originate from the gut. I won't even, if I've got clients who I'm seeing for hormonal issues, whether it's whatever hormonal issue, I will always do a stool test. And I know a lot of people like to do hormonal testing, but things change so much once you look at the gut and start to make changes, that I'll do that. And then if we need to, because a lot of the time you'll correct things, then if you need to, we'll do the other, say Dutch testing and stuff like that. But your gut has an impact on every single system of the body. So your gut health, obviously autoimmunity, we know that 80% of the immune system is in the gut. On your mental health, on your hormones, on your cardiovascular health, what's going on in the gut affects everything. So you can't not look at the gut. And if you're not looking at gut, you're missing, a big part of what could be going on. It's, and when you do a test, you're looking at digestion, absorption, inflammation, good microbes, problematic microbes, all these things, the different microbes in your gut, they could be the driver for inflammation.
And I'm the same as you. I always run a stool test. It's something that I think it's just so invaluable, isn't it, as a tool when you're helping people. And you also get the SIGA as well, don't you? So in terms of looking at that immune function as well, which with autoimmunity is really useful. But I think people don't always realize how much you get on the stool test, because maybe they're used to sort of, the NHS do sort of, a bowel check, and there's a couple of markers that they maybe look at. And, I always say to people, we get I think a 21-page report or something like that comes back with all these markers on it. And it's entirely different to what you would get on the NHS.
Yeah, with the NHS, you're getting calprotectin, so we're looking at inflammation. You're getting H. pylori, which is the most common gut infection, and you're getting occult blood. Those are the real 3 markers. That's only the 3. We're looking at 50 plus, so it's very, very, very different. You get the health, of your gallbladder, your pancreas. It's not, you're getting a picture of other things that are going on as well. That said, from a history, you can kind of get an inclination, if there's an issue with the gallbladder and different things like that. But a lot of symptoms can mimic. So, fat and stool can be gallbladder, can be pancreas. And so it is playing a little bit of, with the stool test, exactly what's going on.
That allows you to dig in,
right?
Deeper, quicker, doesn't it? So it helps you to get people where they need to be quicker, basically.
100%. They're the most invaluable test, so helpful.
I completely agree with you. So another question that came in from people was, do you see issues? So I think this is around, I know who this question came from, and she does have autoimmunity. So I think this is where this sort of thinking is going. But she said, do you see people who have been on a restrictive diet for a long time, if they've got autoimmunity, which I know this is the case with this one, where they've maybe read a lot online, cut things out, cut lots of food groups out? Do you see people who are struggling from being too restrictive? And this is important because we know how important diversity in the diet is, and how much of an impact that has on gut health. So I guess, so her question is around, do you see people who have been restrictive for maybe too long or too restrictive, and how does that impact that sort of gut health and other things?
Yeah, no, that's a huge issue. And I think a lot of the time when people are trying to self-diagnose, or or if people are following things like a SIBO diet, but even now with the SIBO diet, it's very restrictive. But even Monash University are saying this is very, very short term, whereas before people would do this for like an extended period of time. Any diet where you are restricting things, they're like, if it's an elimination diet, if it's a SIBO diet, these are all supposed to be very short term diet. Like it's a diet, like it's supposed to be short term. It's not like a food plan, which is something like longer that you would do for an extended period of time. So I mean, and if you're not tolerating foods, again, we're looking at your gut health. So we know, like, for example, people taking dairy out, dairy intolerance, a lot of the time they don't have the bacteria to help break down the lactose. And so looking at the gut, correcting the gut can actually help with things like that. Our microbiome are helping us with detoxification. That's one of the jobs that they do. And so if you're not eating the foods, you're not supporting the gut microbes to do, detox, create B vitamins, help with neurotransmitters. So it can actually start to exacerbate the problems that you're having in the first place. So, and we, like, as you said, we know that from the studies that have been done, we want a diverse diet, looking to have about 30 different plant foods a week because of the effect it has on our gut and our immune system, and how supportive it is for that as well.
I do get quite a lot of people who come into clinic who, have researched and tried to do things to help themselves first. And I understand why they've done that. And they have been on restrictive diets for quite a long time. And a lot of them actually say, I did feel better, and then now I feel worse again, and it's not helping. And a lot of the time, like you said, that's because actually you can feel a little bit better at first, because these are meant to be short-term things, and actually removing some of those trigger foods may have been beneficial originally. But the goal is always to get as much food back in the diet as possible, isn't it? And the way of doing that, like you said, is working on things like the gut health and things like that. So actually you can tolerate more foods back in the diet. But the key is always to get things back in, isn't it?
Yeah. And if you're not tolerating it, you really do want to work with someone to find out why, because, you can do the elimination diet, you can do the SIBO diet, but it's not just that. So when people, like you saying, are taking foods out initially, usually that's because you're not breaking down your proteins, right? So if your digestive system is impaired, you can't break down your proteins. That means they're getting into your bloodstream, okay? And then your immune system is creating antibodies against them to remove them from your bloodstream. So taking those foods out initially, because you're not having them, they might improve some of your symptoms. But as you start replacing them with other foods, and then you're not breaking those down, and those fragments get into your bloodstream, you start creating antibodies against that, and then you'll start to feel worse again. So ultimately, you want to get to the root cause, correct that system, which you can do, you absolutely can do, and then resolve it, from the root cause, because there's always a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? So staying on the subject of diet, nutrition, you share a lot of recipes on your Instagram, and I love your Instagram. And we will link it below in the show notes so that people can find you easily. But what's your favorite sort of anti-inflammatory or immune sort of supportive foods? And do you have any like tips or tricks that you use with clients sort of to help them get these things? Because you said that, you said 30 plant foods a week I sort of tend to use that as sort of a minimum for people. Let's try and get them up to at least 30. So do you have any kind of tips and tricks to help people get these foods into the diet regularly? And like, what are your favorite kind of immune supportive foods?
Okay. So 30 can seem a little bit scary when you're told, like, I have like 2 pieces of fruit, like 2 plants a week, like 2 plants a day. Like, how am I supposed to hit 30? But it's actually not that difficult. And like, the more we can get in the morning, it makes the rest of the day much easier as well. But there are so many little tricks. So for example, if you think of like the onion, right? An onion is one plant food, but if you've got like a yellow onion, a red onion, a shallot, a yellow shallot, that's like 4 types of onion. So like, for example, but they all count as different plant foods. You know, they're all different types. And so they're going to feed different microbes in your gut and allow them to grow. So they're all considered different plant foods. Like when you're cooking, use like different onions. You know, that's 4 onions that you could get in the week that way, really easily in the base of your cooking. When you buy salad, you know, greens are great. You know, that's magnesium, that's B vitamins, really easy food to incorporate into your diet is just like some greens, some pre-washed greens. But if you get the bag that has mixed greens, that's like 5 different plant points because there's 5 different varieties of greens. If you buy like quinoa, get like the tricolor one, that's 3 different kinds of quinoa. If you're like buying herbal teas, if you have a herbal tea every day, if you buy the mixed herbal tea packs, you have a different herbal tea. Like, and that's, you know, a really important point as well. Like plant foods include fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, legumes, grains, teas, spices. You have so much to choose from.
I think people sometimes think, don't they, like when you say 30 foods, they instantly go to like 30 vegetables a week, like they sort of thing. And it's not, there's a lot more that can be included in that, can't there? And like I love the tip of mixed, you know, sort of heritage tomatoes where you get different ones and, you know, things like that, and mixed herbs, and and beautiful. I mean, they're my favorite anyway, but it's that added different colors, isn't it? It's the different color foods have got different nutrients in, so it's worth looking for those things where you get different colors and things like that. I love the tip about getting as many in the morning as well. I think that really just takes the pressure off people, I think, for the rest of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's one of the easiest times to get in. So for example, now it's getting a little bit cooler. A lot of people will have a bowl of porridge, right? So porridge is just oats and whatever milk you want to put in it too. But in the base of the porridge, adding some ground flaxseed, adding some chia, adding some hemp, you can't taste it. They're just different. You know, they're actually all omega-3. They're vegan sources of omega-3. They're just great food. They're all colonic foods too, so they help your gut microbiome. Adding them in the base with your oats is just such a simple hack to get more. You've got 3 plant points in it. And then what you can do is you can add some blueberries. So blueberries are great because you add some natural sweetness. They're so great to use in the morning. They're such a brain food. So, you know, studies have been done, especially with kids, that show having, you know, blueberries in the morning, they perform better. They did the studies with video games, but anyway, they perform better when they had. So like including them in the morning is such a good brain food, right? And then it makes it sweeter. You get an antioxidants, and you don't want the extra sugar. Add some cinnamon too. That will naturally sweeten it too. It'll help blood sugar balance your meal. Okay. So instead of 1 plant point, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then you could add some like yogurt or kefir to get some additional, you know, probiotics in, and you could also do like an almond butter as well. So you've got like 8, you've got like a lot of plant points there, right? So you're like almost a third through what you're supposed to have in the whole week. So, and you feel like you're winning.
It's pimping that porridge up, isn't it? And taking it, it's elevating the dish, taking it from, you know, quite a plain, simple dish to something that's really elevated in terms of nutrients and, you know, what you're going to get out of it, but also in a really quick way, because however, all those things that you've just mentioned, adding in, is not going to take you any longer to prepare your porridge than if you just did it with simple, you know, oats and milk or water or whatever. It really doesn't take that much. It's probably 30 seconds more to chuck those things in. You know, it's not a big time waster for people either.
Yeah, and I think that's huge because we're all busy. We don't have time to, you know, we don't all have time to make elaborate like meals, but this, exactly. It just takes another few seconds just to chuck a few more ingredients in. It's all getting cooked together. There's no additional work involved in it. So
and you mentioned probiotics there, and this was another question that came in over Instagram. Actually, someone asked, do you take a probiotic? Do you have a favorite probiotic? And do you recommend probiotics for children? So it's a bit of a 3-part question, but all around the sort of probiotic area. What is your opinion on sort of probiotics?
I don't actually take a probiotic, but I mean, probiotics can be really good, but they're very strain specific, right? So you don't just I'm just going to take a probiotic. You usually want to take them for a reason. So we know certain strains are good for skin health. Certain strains are good if you have a bit of a sensitive stomach. So you want to get a strain that is helpful for you. Probiotics definitely do have their place, and they are helpful. And I do take them, like if I'm feeling run down, or I feel like I don't feel like myself and I need a bit of support, I will definitely take a probiotic, because they are very beneficial for so many reasons. Day to day, I use probiotic foods in everything, in every meal. So in breakfast, I'll have like yogurt and kefir. So yogurt has probiotics, but kefir has even more. With my lunch, I'll put some sauerkraut. With dinner, I'll put some like kimchi. Maybe I'll use apple cider vinegar with the mother in my dressing. We're so lucky because we get fermented foods in all the supermarkets. They're so easy to buy, and then you can incorporate them, and you want to try to incorporate them into every meal, and then you're getting so many more probiotics than you can from like any other way, right? By just getting them through food. When you do buy them from the supermarket, you want to make sure they're in the refrigerated section. So if they're pasteurized, that kills the bacteria, so you're not going to get the good bacteria. So always look for them in the refrigerated sections, and all supermarkets do sell them now, and in the refrigerated section. So they're so easy to buy and to include. What I do include though is I do include prebiotics. So we know prebiotics feed the good microbes that you already have in your gut and allow them to grow. So probiotics will stay in your gut for 5 to 7 days and then they leave, right? Whereas prebiotics, when you take fibers, they start to feed what you already have and allow them to grow.
Feeding the soil, isn't it? That, if the soil's a probiotic, the prebiotic is putting that feed on there and helping to allow the plants to sort of grow and things like that. So it's that sort of analogy, I guess. Yeah. Exactly. And what about with children? I don't have children, but do you find it difficult to get probiotics or foods into a child's diet?
I mean, I use probiotic foods with the kids as well. I mean, my kids are older now, so I'm not like, I can't sneak anything in, but even now and then I'll make them a smoothie. So smoothies are the best because you can add kefir, you can add some like yogurt and stuff, and you can't taste it. You can also open up a probiotic sachet. With some kids ones, you get powders, but that is something that I do. I did give my kids when they were younger, because they are exposed to a lot of germs. They are at school, and studies have shown that they're less likely to get sick when you are taking a probiotic, and it does support their immune health with all that exposure. So I did give them probiotics. I used to give them stick packs, and I still do sometimes, actually, that have probiotics. I think it's got like a couple of strains of bifido and lactobacillus, and it's got FOS. So it also includes a prebiotic as well. And FOS is actually very sweet tasting. It tastes like candy floss. So actually most kids like it. And you can actually buy FOS as a supplement as well, can't you? And you can add that. So like if you're putting if you're putting sugar on your kids' food, you can actually swap it for some FOS, and it tastes like sugar as well, but it's a prebiotic.
Great tip for getting those in with kids. And you on your Instagram, you make a lot of your own sort of these sort of sauerkrauts and things like this. You've got recipes up on there to make your own, because they're not that difficult to make at home, are they? So if people are looking for a way of doing that, looking for a recipe, then they should definitely hit up your Instagram, because you do put things up on there, because I think you make quite a lot of your own, don't you?
I definitely do try to, yeah. And it doesn't take long. You just have to be patient, for the ferment to ferment. So whether it's a 3-day ferment or a 21-day ferment, you just have to be patient. But yeah, it's cheap as chips, right? So it costs like 60p to get like a huge like jar that could last you all winter, because it is just a cabbage, and you're just maybe adding some turmeric and salt for a sauerkraut.
Yeah,
it's simple.
Yeah, so people
right?
should definitely jump over to your Instagram and check that out, because you've got some good tips over there for doing it yourself as well. So you mentioned that you got diagnosed with PCOS, and I think I'm right in saying that you sort of predominantly work sort of women's health as well as sort of the autoimmunity. You do a lot around women's sort of health cases and things like that. And so someone has asked about PCOS, endometriosis. Is there an impact with the gut health and the stress on those conditions as well? So can you tell us a little bit about the sort of connection with those particular illnesses?
Yeah, no. So we're going back to the gut and the balance of the microbes that we have in the gut. So we've got some gram-negative bacteria in the gut, and these bacteria, like everything is about balance, right? You know, things will be there, but you want everything to be in a nice balance. When you have an overgrowth of some of these gram-negative bacteria, they have an outer coating called lipopolysaccharide. This is quite inflammatory, and as they die, this LPS will get into the bloodstream, and it's very inflammatory, and that can drive conditions like endometriosis, like PCOS. So you can get this inflammation from the gut that then, you know, once it gets into the bloodstream, it can travel anywhere in the body. And so you do get that inflammation that can drive these conditions. That's why it's so important to always address your gut health. Otherwise, you're missing a big piece of the puzzle.
Because I think sometimes people think that there is not much else that they can do outside of, you know, the medication and things like that, and don't necessarily realize how much we can work on these conditions and help support you know, people. I've got a friend at the moment who's just been diagnosed and was worried about sort of whether she'd be able to get pregnant, because that's something that obviously comes up a lot, you know, and there, you know, you can, okay, there might be cases where it's a bit more difficult, but there's a lot of things that you can do sort of naturally and holistically to work on these conditions, isn't there, as well as just going down the sort of, you know, the medical treatment route.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We know gut health and fertility are impacted. We know like your oral microbiome. So your mouth is the beginning of your GI tract, right? We know your oral microbiome affects placental health. There are connections throughout like our GI tract that will impact all hormones, fertility, endometriosis, PCOS, all of these areas.
Yeah, right? I love that. Yeah. So can you, I'm going to put you on the spot slightly, but can you give sort of people listening today sort of, what would be, we talked about simple steps at the beginning and how some of these foundational, very simple things can have quite an impact on people, quite a significant impact. So what would be your sort of 5 top tips for gut health, for stress, just sort of simple things that people could walk away today and sort of implement into their life? What would you advise them to do?
Okay, we were talking about like these microbes from the gut and inflammation. So first of all, getting your plant points in. So your 30 plant points and your 30 grams of fiber. So you have to also, you want to try to hit the 30 grams of fiber too. That can really help that balance of microbes in your gut and make it more favorable. Okay, so we eat fiber, we feed the good microbes, and it starts to crowd out some of the problematic microbes that we don't like, and that can help with things like that. So trying to get your 30 plant points, if you're not having a lot already, start with something like buying a bag of rocket, a punnet of blueberries, and a jar of fermented foods. Just buy those simple 3 things from the supermarket. They're ready made. You just have to open them up and eat them. But those are really 3 really easy things to incorporate that have really good impact. So greens are bitters, they help digestion, blueberries, mental health, and fermented foods, probiotics. Simple 3 things to incorporate. Number 2 would be like mindful eating. You know, when you do have your meals, do take a moment to just like breathe for a second, make sure you are calm. It makes such, you know, a huge impact to how you absorb your foods. It's not what you eat, it's what you absorb. And like being present can really allow your body to produce more digestive enzymes, more digestive juices, so that you can absorb and get the benefit of what you're eating. Number 3, I love gratitude journaling. So, you know, when we talk about stress as well, that's another really lovely thing because it helps calm the nervous system. And it was shown, like, I think, is it 6 weeks or 12 weeks? The studies have shown that it helps retrain your brain towards happiness, right? So if we're remembering 3 things we're grateful for every night, and when you're doing it at night, just before you go to sleep, that's like that really helps. That's what really helps even more, because you're going to sleep and it's the last thing you're thinking about. And then you do it again in the morning when you wake up. That can be really powerful.
Yeah.
And it helps to rewire it that way as well. Last thing at night, first thing in the morning, just like gratitude journaling, that can be really helpful for, like, you know, if, you know, to do daily, just to help the nervous system. And that has an impact on all the systems. Getting outside is really important. So we know that indoor air is more toxic than outdoor air. So, you know, even if you just open your window, get like the air flowing, you know, going outside for a walk. That can be one of the best hacks to actually support your gut, your immune health. You know, go for a walk in the park or in the woods. You actually breathe in plant chemicals, and these plant chemicals can like help to positively support your gut microbiome and have a really good impact. with that. Okay, that's for number 5, sleep. Get your 8 hours of sleep. I mean, we've all had those days where, you know, we feel like we're on the brink of getting sick, and we sleep really, really well, and we wake up and we feel better. Like, okay, I was getting a cold, I feel better, I've kicked it, right? Whereas those days where we feel like we're getting sick and we're so stressed about something, and we're tossing and we're turning and we don't sleep, and then you wake up in the morning and you're like totally sick, right? You know, your immune system is working so hard at night to help you. And so just trying to sleep like as much as possible. It helps with the stress during the day. It helps with the immunity. It helps with the hormones. It helps with everything.
Yeah, they're brilliant tips. And they're really, like we said, simple, easy things for people to work on, but are going to make a really significant difference, aren't they?
Absolutely. They help create that healthy foundation.
Yeah. And that's so important. And finally, so the last question, we know that autoimmunity can be quite a journey, and it can be for some quite a long one. For me, I mean, I was 15 years getting diagnosed. I know some people it's quite quick. For some people, it's quite a long time. But if people are out there and they are listening to this and they're either on the autoimmune sort of journey, whether they've got autoimmunity, got a diagnosis, or whether they're sort of struggling to get the answers and the results that they want, what would your advice to them be in terms of to get a diagnosis or to get the help that they need? So what would you to find, I'm guessing, to get to sort of the root cause of what's going on for them?
Yeah, no, I think it's really helpful to work with someone, like, because you want to, connect all the dots to see what's going on, and just to, because it's always the same things that you're looking at, but they're all different for everyone, right? Looking at viruses, looking at stress, looking at your liver, looking at your gut. You're looking at all the different systems of your body, and we're looking to see where those imbalances are. And so actually doing a deep dive is so invaluable, because once you know what it is, right? So whether it's a virus or whether it's a parasite, or do you have H. pylori, or, then you can actually work on resolving it. You can bring that load down, you can eradicate that virus, then you can actually start to rebuild things, right? And correct things as much as possible, prevent things from getting worse. And
I think that's it is getting to that root cause, isn't it? I think if we it's so important to know what's going on in the body to be able to build that picture and connect the dots. And it's just not something that I think people can do. You're not going to do it by just sort of going online and taking, pulling a diet off, whether it's, whichever diets, whether it's a SIBO diet or an autoimmune paleo diet, or, whatever people are pulling off the internet as kind of, this is the diet, the cure-all sort of thing. It's that sort of work's it's going to help, but it's not going to help you get to the real underlying issues, is it? That's what really gets people on that path to sort of feeling well again.
No, 100%. I mean, even us as practitioners, we will work. I don't know about you, but I will work with someone else, because I can't see, like, you don't see yourself the way someone else sees you and picks up things that you might not even be aware of, right? It's very hard to we can do some stuff, but sometimes you do need, an outside, you need to work with someone. Like I've worked with someone. So like,
I think so. It's sometimes when it's yourself as well, it's easy to, I think, particularly because we're helping other people a lot, it's easy to almost put our stuff aside. It's a bit like, if it's like they sort of say, if your husband's a builder, you never get a job done at home. It's like, it's that sort of thing, isn't it?
It's true. And like when you work with someone, like I will get a plan and I'm like, okay, I'll follow it. But otherwise with me, I'll just take things randomly. And when you're right, because you're doing it for other people, you end up not doing it for yourself. Whereas if you're working with someone, you get your plan, the accountability is huge as well. You're accountable, and then you actually progress through things, right? It's also prioritizing your own.
And that's a huge part of working with a practitioner, I think, as well as the knowledge that they have. We've all studied for a long time, and there's also that accountability and support side of things, and also the access to to the testing that we've touched on as well. But it's about more than just sort of the knowledge, I guess, isn't it? That's sort of one part of the puzzle. Farzanah, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really great conversation, and I'm sure people are going to get lots out of it, and lots of tips as well in there for people. We will link your Instagram below, because like I said, I love your Instagram, and there's some great recipes and things like that you put up that people can jump over and have a look at. But thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Oh, absolutely. I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Good Health Podcast. Do share the episode with anyone who you think it may benefit or who may enjoy it, and help me spread the word by rating the episode or leaving a review. If you want more, you can find other episodes in the series on your podcast app, or sign up to my free newsletter. Not only will you get information on new episodes launching, but we cover lots of health topics, with the Ask Nicole section where you can send in your questions, my favourite recipes, my favourite products, tips and tricks to help you on the road to good health, and much more. You can sign up free of charge at nicolegoodhealth.com/newsletter, also linked below. I hope you have a lovely week. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.